Today on the program, we discuss the contestedness of rule of law, the arguments for and against it, alongside national security. Our guest is a senior advocate of Nigeria, Robert Clarke, who believes that the Constitution is like a double-edged sword, and in certain circumstances, the Constitution that guarantees one's rights also takes it away in other instances. Also today, we speak to legal practitioners on the reforms they want to see as the national leadership of the NBA hit the ground running. Plus, the Attorney General of the Federation, Mr. Abubakar Malami, advocates the use of forensic and investigative auditing to prevent fraud and financial crimes. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Millicent Walker. The term rule of law is derived from the French phrase la principe de l'égalité, the principle of legality. It refers to a government based on principles of law and not of men, an important ideal in our politics, yet the rule of law is almost difficult to understand without a little history. My guest starts by explaining the doctrine and its importance to society.
In any society where people decide to come together and live together, there is a set of rules and regulations that decide how they live, how they cooperate, how they do many things. The rules and regulations that are made to enable them to live a society, a decent society, is called the rule of law. Many countries translate this rule of law into a constitution. Nigeria today has a constitution that contains what we can call doctrine of the rule of law.
Are there instances where the rule of law takes the backseat? Say, for example, areas of public policy?
You see, in every civilized country, including Nigeria, whichever constitution is at play in those countries, the doctrine of rule of law is predominant. In any democracy, that is, the courts are enjoined to do their duties according to the rule of law, that is, according to the constitution of that country. The executive arm, in dispensing the executive duties, are also enjoined to do so within the framework of the rules of law, which is the Constitution. However, that same Constitution that guarantees you all the freedom you need to cooperate as a society also now takes away from you some of those rights. For instance, in Nigeria today, under our Constitution, we have what you call fundamental human rights: freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of everything. But that same Constitution that gives you and I all those powers also ensures that in certain circumstances, those, powers that you think you possess as an individual may be restrained by the court for one or other reason. Essentially, there are three areas I can just recollect where such are restrained. If you are a reporter in the newspapers and you publish things, when you publish, under the law of libel, I, or an ordinary person, has a right to sue for defamation of character, for libelous articles. And one of the defenses, when the law says you cannot defame me, if you defame me, but certain categories of people have a right to defame, in quote, but have a right to defend their action, to say, yes, I am a reporter. I have reported these things, which I had, but I did them under a privileged condition as a reporter without malice. So you can see that at that stage, the law allows a reporter, if there is no malicious intent, to publish anything against you. Whereas a person who is not a reporter, if he does that, will have to pay damages. Also, when you come to privilege papers, for instance, what comes to mind now to me is what is happening in America yesterday. The Senate of the Congress in America is interviewing a prospective candidate for the judiciary, Supreme Court seat. The presidency, in sending papers to the committee of the Senate, says, look, we are not going to show you all the papers you have required. Even there are some we are going to show to you, it's only for your eyes, not for the public. And we are using executive privilege. So in certain circumstances, for instance, if there's a litigation in court and certain papers want to be tendered, and the opposition will say, look, you cannot tender this. They are public documents which under a privileged condition cannot be tendered. The most clear one is bail conditions in court. The law says, you are entitled to be given bail, except in certain instances when you commit murder or you're treasonable. But the judge, under the powers granted him, may refuse to grant you bail, which under the Constitution you are entitled to by right. And the judge will say, look, bail is a discretionary power of the court. I will not grant you bail because I, Robert Clarke, as a judge sitting over your case, I believe you will not, next case I adjourn this matter, you will not come. So you can see that although under the law, a subject is entitled to bail, but such rights at times can be curtailed. Now, the government itself can curtail your rights under security matters.
It also means that you agree with Mr. President, his statement at the opening of the 58th annual conference of the Nigerian Bar Association on substituting rule of law for national security.
Well, let us be honest. Mr. President made a statement as a politician. You and I in Nigeria, and those who are criticizing him for that statement, know that he's not a lawyer, one. They also know, too, that he cannot make laws in Nigeria. He's only an executive president. Only the National Assembly, under the Constitution, can make laws. So if he stands and makes a comment and says, look, I want courts now to take into consideration, more consideration to be given to security more than the rule of law, he's just flying a kite. Because that aspect of the rule of law is embodied in the Constitution of Nigeria. And he knows that he cannot change it, but the same Constitution allows for that breach. So he was speaking with that knowledge, I hope so, that yes, already the Constitution allows courts to take into consideration security aspect of a matter and may not apply the rule of law. But I am trying to say that, look, when you are doing it now, give it more attention than the rule of law. He cannot do that, but he's just flying a kite. He knows he cannot do it because he's not a lawmaker. I know he cannot do it. But Nigeria is a different cup of tea to all of us. We have allowed ethnicity, we have allowed religion and politics to, spoil all our ways of life. When Buhari said so, I think the laureate came in and bombasted him, But instead of, looking at the circumstances of the country, now let me look at what made Buhari to say that. Today, virtually 70% of the geographical area of Nigeria is being bombarded with one vice or the other. Boko Haram in the northeast thing, headsmen in this thing, virtually in 5, 6 states, 7 states, kidnappings here and there, burglary, armed robbery. Nigeria today is being bombarded virtually by all known vices. So under the circumstances we are today, if Mr. President now says, look, the existing laws we have cannot meet up what we are facing as an integrity, please, courts, give this consideration, armed robbery, kidnapping, Boko Haram, when you are dealing with people, take into consideration first the security of the country.
About executive orders, when it comes to matters already in court, is it still possible to make these orders without encroaching on other arms of government?
He has already made that clear. He has issued executive order number 6. Whether he's entitled to do it or not, anybody who feels he's overshooting his powers, go to court. This is the good side of Nigeria. But you can't be, making politics out of a document and you are not going to court. Then that is just mere politics. I have seen that document, order 6. It purely goes into crime, corruption. Now, there are so many laws available now to cover all those things. Under the Money Laundering Act, today in Nigeria, if you find that a man is leading a life, that is above his means, and you find he has 6, 7, 8, 9 houses within Ikoyi, naturally, you go to court. Ask the authorities who have the power. They will go to court on your behalf, EFCC, and they'll say, look, property number so 3, we want you to give us a temporary seizure orders. Let him come and tell us. This is what happens in civilized countries, so it's nothing new. So this executive order is saying that there are many Nigerians who have served this country, who have stolen from this country, and who have mighty properties. We know the properties are there. They have covered it up. Let us seize it. Give me the power force to seize it and let them come and say how they got it. So that's what it is. If nobody has any problem to hide or anything to hide, what is wrong in that?
The US president, for example, uses the tool executive orders, which he uses to make his mark without approval of Congress. But even at that, there's still several provisions in the US Constitution as to how Congress can, change previous laws, and then there's the 2/3 majority. But in Nigeria's case, why a few people have criticized the Executive Order 6 of Mr. President?
I can assure you that what is contained is not something that goes against the present law of the country. When you look under the Money Laundering Act, EFCC, as the agent that is responsible for looking into these crimes, sees you as a young man riding a Ferrari, living in Banana Island, doing this. They have the right to say, look, we have investigated you, you have a property here, you have a property. Then they go to court ex parte. They go to court ex parte and tell the court, this gentleman has no means of livelihood. He owns property here. We suspect these properties have been gotten from illicit means. Let us put a caution on those properties and let him come to court and explain the source of wealth. We already have that law. So Order 6 is nothing new to our laws. What Buhari is now saying is that about 5 people today in Nigeria are richer than Nigeria. I know about 4 out of the 5 that their wealth today, and they are people who served under different governments in this country within the past 60 years. Should that situation continue? Should they be untouchable because they were president or ministers or senate, this thing? Today, 5 Nigerians are richer than Nigeria as a country. How did they get the money? So, under Order 6 now, you can now make investigation. This man was so and so in Nigeria from 1980 to 1970. By the time today, he owns this, he owns this, he owns this, he owns this. We believe what he earned those period is not enough for him to do. So give us an ex parte order to, clamp down on those and let him come to court to tell us the period he served Nigeria, how did he accumulate such money? So that is the essence of Order 6. And it's for the interest of you and I. If such things are recovered, Today, many governors will be able to pay salaries, which they have not done for the past years. Many universities will have extra funds to do research. Many local governments will have hospitals. So let's start from one thing. Don't let us allow politics to spoil many good things that are coming up in Nigeria.